Galactic armies spent centuries preparing to fight the deadliest predator in the known universe. Whole civilizations fell trying to survive a single encounter. But when humans finally saw it, they didn't raise weapons. They just scratched its chin. Before we dive into how that happened, make sure you smash that like button, drop a comment on whether you'd risk petting a galactic nightmare, and of course subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this story. The camera of words widens and the tale begins. The chamber was vast, every inch of it carved from white stone that hummed faintly with containment fields, and yet the air inside felt suffocating. Holoscreens floated in the air, looping the same harrowing footage. Ships burning in the void. Armored ranks of alien soldiers scattering like insects before a storm. And at the center of it all, an obsidian mass of muscle, fangs, and unblinking eyes that moved like shadow-given flesh. It was called a predator, though that word seemed too small for something that could rip apart a civilization. Every alien in the chamber watched the footage with reverent horror. Every alien except one man. Ethan Cole sat in the back row, boots propped lazily on the polished bench, arms folded across his broad chest. His face bore the kind of smile that belonged in a bar fight rather than a galactic council hall. He was Earth's representative here, though to most of the counselors, that title translated to token primitive. Humanity was young, fragile, still carving out its place among the stars. To bring one of them here into the seat of power was tolerated as a courtesy, nothing more. And yet the courtesy had already soured. On screen, the predator lunged through a phalanx of alien defenders, its claws cleaving through exoskeleton armor as if it were paper. The recording's perspective shook with panicked screams. At the moment the feed froze, a counselor rose, his voice a guttural rasp. "This," he hissed, his many tendrils curling inward, "is what awaits us. The destroyer wakes once more. We have trained generations, bred armies for the sole purpose of resisting it, and still we fall short." Others murmured in agreement, their voices clicking and buzzing in tones that conveyed ancient fear. They called the beast extinction incarnate. Death given form. Ethan's boots thunked down to the floor. He leaned forward, squinting at the frozen holoscreen, then muttered, "Huh. Looks like my ex's cat." Silence fell over the chamber like a guillotine. Dozens of eyes, compound, slit pupil, glowing, turned toward him. Ethan shrugged, expression unfazed. "What? Big mean scratches a lot, leaves messes everywhere. Yeah, that's pretty much Mr. Whiskers on steroids." Laughter was not what followed. A hiss rose instead, sharp and collective. One counselor, a long-limbed creature with translucent skin that pulsed with bioluminescence, leaned forward. "You jest at what has devoured empires?" Ethan's grin widened, the faint scar across his cheek tugging with the movement. "I'm not joking. I've wrestled dogs bigger than this thing back home. You people ever heard of grizzlies? Siberian tigers? No. Well, let's just say extinction's been knocking on our door since we figured out how to stand upright. We got used to it." The murmurs grew louder, disbelief thickening the air. Jack Mercer, seated beside Ethan, pinched the bridge of his nose. His friend was a bulldozer in human skin, and Jack had spent years patching up the dents. Where Ethan's military history was etched into every line of his stance, Jack was softer, bespectacled despite the technology that made such things unnecessary, and dressed more like a lecturer than a warrior. He was here not as muscle but as mind, an Earth zoologist chosen to observe and advise. He leaned closer, lowering his voice so only Ethan would hear. "Could you maybe not antagonize the beings who can vaporize us with a single vote?" Ethan smirked without looking at him. "Relax, Professor. If they can't handle a joke, how are they gonna handle that thing?" He jerked a thumb at the holoscreen. At the head of the chamber, the presiding counselor raised a staff carved from some luminous stone. The buzzing ceased. "The predator has stirred. Our scouts confirm its movement near the Hadrex frontier. Already, the border colonies prepare for evacuation. We will deploy every trained legion. Every war engine. This council will not allow the terror to spread unchecked." A deep, resonant pause followed, and then the presiding counselor's gaze slid toward the humans. "As for your kind, you will remain here. Observers only. You are fragile things, untested, and we will not waste lives on hubris." Ethan stood, the motion deliberate, drawing every eye in the chamber. He was not tall by alien standards, yet he carried the weight of a soldier who had long since stopped measuring himself against others. His voice cut through the chamber. "With respect, counselor, fragility's not what got us this far. You think Earth survived everything it did by hiding? No. We fight. Sometimes we win. Sometimes we tame the damn things trying to eat us. Either way, we don't sit on the sidelines. The chamber erupted again, half outrage, half disbelief. Jack tugged at Ethan's sleeve, hissing under his breath, "You're going to get us barred from the council entirely." But Ethan wasn't backing down. His gaze locked on the frozen image of the predator, its towering bulk, its claws slick with alien blood, and something sparked behind his eyes. Not fear. Recognition. It was the same look he had worn the first time Jack saw him crouched before a snarling dog in Afghanistan, hand outstretched, steady and sure, while everyone else swore the animal would tear him apart. That dog hadn't bitten. It had rolled onto its back. Ethan had always claimed animals could smell fear, and he had never carried any. Now, standing in the council chamber with every alien heart pounding at the thought of extinction, Ethan Cole wore that same unshakable calm. "Send your armies," he said, voice steady, unwavering. "Train your legions. But I'm going out there too. Someone needs to look that thing in the eye and figure out what it wants." Gasps, shouts, protests erupted. Some voices demanded he be silenced, others called him suicidal, others whispered words Jack couldn't catch. But over the din, the presiding counselor struck the staff once more, the sound echoing like thunder. "Then so be it," the counselor declared, voice heavy with doom. "If humans wish to throw themselves to extinction, we will not stand in your way. But do not ask for our aid when it devours you." Ethan's grin sharpened. "Wouldn't dream of it." Later, as the chamber emptied and the arguments still rang in the air like phantom echoes, Jack caught up with Ethan in the corridor. "You realize," Jack said, his voice low, "that you just volunteered to march straight toward the galaxy's worst nightmare?" Ethan shrugged, hands tucked into the pockets of his jacket as if they were walking toward a bar instead of a battlefield. "Yeah, guess so. And you're smiling." "Because," Ethan said, his tone casual but his eyes burning with something Jack couldn't place, "if it really is the worst thing out there, then it's about time someone treated it like anything else. You ever notice how the scarier the animal, the quicker it calms down when you scratch behind the ears?" Jack stared at him, half in disbelief, half in fear. "Ethan, you're out of your mind." "Maybe," Ethan said, striding ahead, the looming windows casting his shadow long across the floor. "But if the universe's biggest monster wants a fight, I'll give it one. And if it just wants someone not to flinch? Well, I'm good at that too." Behind them, the council chamber doors closed with a heavy finality. The fate of worlds was already shifting, though neither man yet realized how far. And somewhere beyond the frontier, in the darkness between stars, something vast and hungry stirred. Dawn never touched the frontier world of Arkan. Its skies were a bruise of permanent storm, clouds swollen with violet lightning that forked across the horizon like veins. The armies gathered beneath it, drawn from a dozen species, their armor polished, banners unfurled, weapons humming with restrained power. To the aliens this was no ordinary deployment, it was ritual. Whole generations had been raised for this single purpose: stand against the predator when it stirred, die if necessary, and hope that enough lives were lost to slow it down. Ethan Cole stood among them with hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets, looking for all the world like a man waiting for a late bus. The soldiers around him avoided even glancing his way, as though acknowledging the human would somehow doom them faster. He ignored them in turn. His gaze was fixed on the horizon, on the way the air itself seemed to warp, heavy with the weight of something coming closer. He felt the tremors before they heard them. Beside him, Jack Mercer was recording on his datapad, trying to mask his own unease with the meticulous focus of a scientist. His glasses reflected the stormlight, and his voice, soft but steady, narrated for the record. "The predator's approach is altering atmospheric conditions. Pressure spike, wind shear. I'd say it's generating an environmental field simply by existing." Ethan cracked his knuckles. "Sounds like a big entrance." "It isn't a joke," Jack muttered. His voice dipped lower. "Ethan, we shouldn't be here. You saw the council's archives. Nothing survives contact. Whole fleets, gone." "Yeah," Ethan said, eyes still locked on the shifting horizon. "And that's why we're here. Somebody's gotta stop treating this thing like a ghost story and start treating it like an animal." Jack lowered his datapad. His friend's tone was casual, but there was steel beneath it, the same steel he'd heard years ago when Ethan volunteered for missions no sane soldier wanted. That tone always meant Ethan had already made up his mind. The first scream of alien war trumpets cut through the storm. Legions shifted, weapons raised, engines roared. From the horizon, the ground bulged, split, and something vast rose into view. The predator emerged. It was larger than the footage suggested, as if the camera had softened its true scale. Obsidian plates covered its frame, jagged and interlocked like the armor of a god of war. Dozens of eyes burned amber across its skull, each unblinking, each fixed on prey. Its maw opened, and the sound that tore free was not a roar so much as a vibration, low, bone-deep, a thunder that rattled teeth and armor alike. Jack flinched. Ethan did not. The alien armies opened fire. Beams of plasma, lances of lightning, shells that could split mountains. The storm-lit field became a furnace of energy, light cascading across the predator's frame. When the glow cleared, the beast still stood, unharmed. It stepped forward, and with that step, soldiers broke. Some screamed and ran, others froze where they stood, weapons shaking in their claws. The predator moved with terrifying speed. A swipe of its claw sent a line of tanks spiraling into the air like toys. Its tail lashed, slicing through a phalanx of shield-bearers. Each movement was a massacre, each breath another wave of terror rolling through the armies that had spent centuries preparing for this moment. Ethan took one step forward. Jack's hand shot out, gripping his arm. "Don't. You'll get torn apart before you're within 10 meters. Ethan looked at him, and there was something calm in his eyes, almost serene. "You said it yourself, Jack. Animals act with purpose. Look at it." He gestured toward the predator, who had paused in its slaughter, head lowering, nostrils flaring as if catching a scent. "That's not random killing. That's searching." Jack's breath caught. He saw it now, the subtle shift of the beast's head, the way it tilted toward movement, scanning not with hunger, but with something closer to curiosity. Still, curiosity in a galaxy's apex predator was deadly. Ethan shook free of Jack's grip and walked. Each step crunched against broken ground, echoing against the thunder and screams. Soldiers parted instinctively, alien eyes wide with disbelief. A lone unarmored human, moving toward the beast that had destroyed their armies, as if this were all some kind of stroll. The predator noticed. Its head swung, eyes locking on him, thousands of tons of muscle focusing like a blade on a single point. It shifted its massive frame, lowering itself, and with a ground-shaking surge, it charged. The world seemed to collapse inward. Soldiers screamed for Ethan to stop. Some fired wildly, but their shots went astray, unwilling to risk hitting him. Jack shouted his name, his voice torn away by the thunder of the beast's charge. Ethan didn't move. He stood, waiting. The predator's shadow swallowed him whole. It reared back, claws gleaming, jaws widening to reveal teeth like serrated towers. And then, Ethan raised a hand. Just one. Calm, steady. The predator halted. Its claws hung frozen midair, its dozen eyes narrowed. The earth trembled with the strain of its halted momentum. Ethan stepped closer. Slowly. Deliberately. Then, with a motion so absurd that the entire battlefield held its breath, he reached up and scratched along the underside of its jagged chin. The sound that followed broke the universe. A low, guttural rumble vibrating through the air like an earthquake, but not in anger. It was pleasure. The predator leaned into the touch, eyes half-litting, its monstrous body rumbling in what could only be described as a purr. The battlefield froze. Entire armies, trained for centuries, stood slack-jawed. Weapons lowered, disbelief writ across alien faces. Soldiers who had been ready to die now simply stared, uncomprehending, as the apex predator of the galaxy tilted its head into the palm of one human. Jack staggered forward, his voice a whisper. "Impossible." The predator curled slightly, lowering its massive frame until Ethan stood nearly at eye level with its unblinking gaze. Its tail swayed lazily behind it, a gesture Jack recognized from countless Earth animals, relaxed, unthreatened, comfortable. Ethan chuckled under his breath, scratching along the creature's jagged hide like a man greeting an oversized pet. Knew it. Just needed someone not to flinch. Jack's datapad slipped from his hand, forgotten, shattering against the ground. His world, the galaxy's understanding of this nightmare, fractured with it. All the legends, the empires destroyed, the countless dead, and yet the truth was here, purring under a human's hand. The silence broke with a single voice, shrill and panicked, rising from the alien commanders. "Kill them both. The beast has bonded." Weapons lifted once more, 1,000 barrels aimed at Ethan and the predator. The creature's eyes snapped open, glowing bright. It shifted, curling protectively around the man who scratched its chin, its maw parting in a growl that rattled the bones of everyone present. And in that instant, every soldier understood. The predator no longer served extinction. It served him. The storm raged overhead, lightning tearing the sky open, and for the first time in recorded history, the galaxy's deadliest predator bowed its head, not to armies, not to empires, but to a human. The chamber that had once echoed with predictions of extinction now trembled with disbelief. Across the council's grand assembly hall, alien leaders sat in silence, watching the recording again and again. The image did not change no matter how many times they replayed it. The Predator, the galaxy's most feared scourge, bowing its massive head beneath the hand of a human soldier. No armor, no weapons, no legions. Just flesh and bone. And yet it had submitted. Ethan sat at the center of the chamber, unrestrained but surrounded by a semicircle of armed guards who flinched every time his new companion rumbled outside the walls. The Predator had not left his side since the battlefield, pacing the perimeter of the human encampment like a lion watching over its cub. Only with Ethan's word had it agreed to remain outside, its low growls vibrating through the stone. The guards swore they could feel its presence through the floor, each vibration a reminder that if it wished, none of them would survive. Jack stood close to Ethan, arms folded, eyes darting across the room as the counselors debated in hissing tones. The zoologist's mind was a storm of half-formed theories. Bonding behavior, dominance displays, social pack dynamics, concepts that applied to wolves, lions, elephants, were now bleeding into the impossible. His notes had grown frantic until he could barely read his own writing. But no matter how he tried to rationalize it, the truth was simple. The Predator had chosen Ethan. The presiding counselor rose, its crystalline form refracting the dim light into shards of color. Its voice rang sharp. What you have done is unnatural. That creature was never meant to be tamed. It has slain billions. If you think we will allow one primitive to wield it as a weapon, you are mistaken. Ethan leaned back in his chair, unruffled. I didn't tame it. It made a choice. Lies, another counselor spat, mandibles clacking. The beast enslaves minds. It bends them, twists them. Do not think yourself immune. Ethan's grin flashed. Buddy, I've been yelled at by Marine drill instructors scarier than your monster. Trust me, if it wanted to break me, it would have tried already. Instead, it likes the chin scratches. Gasps and furious hisses filled the chamber. Jack winced. He knew Ethan's humor was a shield, a way of cutting through fear, but the counselors heard only arrogance. Jack raised his hand. His voice was quieter, steadier. If I may. I've studied predator psychology my entire life. What we witnessed was not mind control. It was social bonding. Earth animals, wolves, wild dogs, even certain big cats, form attachments when they sense confidence instead of fear. Ethan didn't challenge it with weapons and he didn't run. He treated it as an equal. That was the difference. The presiding counselor turned its prismed head. You suggest this is domestication? Jack hesitated. Not domestication. Trust. A fragile one. If he falters, it may turn. But it's real. The room pulsed with unease. Some leaned forward, captivated by the explanation. Others recoiled, muttering that humans could not be trusted with such a force. Ethan tapped the table with one finger, drawing their attention back. Let me ask you something. You've been fighting this thing for millennia, yeah? Whole armies trained just to slow it down. How's that worked out for you? No one answered. The silence was damning. Thought so, Ethan said, voice steady now. You train to resist. We adapt. That's the difference. We've lived with predators at our throats since day one. Sometimes we kill them. Sometimes we make them part of the family. Either way, we don't panic. That's why it chose me, not you. The words cut deep and the chamber split. Some voices cried for his execution, fearing that leaving the predator in human hands was handing the galaxy over to chaos. Others whispered that perhaps the humans were not weaklings after all, but something more dangerous. As the arguments escalated, a shadow fell across the chamber windows. The predator had moved closer, crouching until its colossal form blotted out the stormlight. Its eyes glowed, scanning the hall as if sensing its chosen was under threat. The guards tensed, weapons raised, but Ethan only raised a hand in silent command. Outside, the beast stilled, lowering its head again to the ground as if obeying. That moment broke something. The room erupted in uproar, disbelief mixing with awe. Jack whispered under his breath, "It's listening to you. Ethan, it actually understands." "Of course it does," Ethan replied softly, never taking his eyes off the beast beyond the window. "Predators always understand strength. You just have to show them without trying to break them." The presiding counselor struck its staff against the floor, cutting the chaos. "This cannot be permitted. If one human controls such a beast, others will attempt the same. What happens when your kind breeds them? Armies of extinction at your command? No. We will not gamble the galaxy's survival." The words were barely spoken when a sharp crack echoed from above. The lights flickered, systems shuddered, and the air smelled of ozone. Jack's head snapped upward. That wasn't the storm. An explosion ripped through the upper balcony. Armored figures dropped from the smoke, their weapons trained not on the predator but on Ethan himself. Rival soldiers, their insignias hidden, eyes burning with desperation. They weren't here to debate. They were here to end the threat before it grew. Ethan shoved Jack down as plasma bolts scorched the air. Guards rushed forward, but the attackers cut through them with brutal precision. The council screamed, retreating into shields and alcoves. The predator's roar shattered the chamber. Glass exploded inward as the beast surged through, massive frames shaking the hall's foundation. It tore through the intruders with frightening ease, swatting one into paste, crushing another beneath its claw. Those who tried to flee were cut down in a blur of teeth and tail. In the chaos, Ethan rose, unarmed, but his voice cut sharper than any weapon. "Easy. With me." The predator froze mid-strike, massive jaws clamped inches from an assassin's head. Its many eyes shifted to Ethan, waiting. Ethan's hand lifted, palm outward, and with a guttural growl the beast released the soldier, who scrambled away trembling. The entire chamber held its breath. Even Jack stared, mouth dry, as he realized Ethan wasn't just surviving this bond, he was directing it. The attackers lay broken, the council trembling in their gilded seats, and the predator loomed over Ethan like a shadow carved from nightmare. Yet when Ethan reached out again, scratching along the jagged chin, the beast rumbled in approval, lowering itself until its massive head nearly touched the floor. Jack's voice was hoarse when he finally spoke. "They're going to fear us more than it now." Ethan kept his eyes on the predator, expression unreadable. "Good. Fear means they'll listen. And if more of these things are out there, the galaxy's gonna need us whether they like it or not." The presiding counselor's staff shook in its crystalline grip, refracting the lightning that split the storm outside. The choice lay heavy in the air: destroy the humans here and now, or accept the impossible truth that the galaxy's deadliest predator had found its master. And beyond the storm, faint but undeniable, new signatures stirred. The predator Ethan had tamed was not alone. Rickard had fought battles on frozen moons, in nebulae that burned the eyes, and on the scorched surfaces of worlds whose names he had forgotten the moment he departed. Yet nothing had prepared him for the sight before him now. The predator, the very beast that had brought empires to their knees, leaning its massive head toward Elias like a docile hound begging for affection. Its armored hide shimmered faintly in the light of the council chamber, every muscle coiled in potential violence, but its eyes, black, sharp, lethal, closed halfway as Elias scratched the underside of its chin. The galaxy's most feared nightmare purred. Not roared, not growled, purred. The counselors had recoiled at first, some reaching for concealed weapons, others too frozen to act, yet as the seconds stretched, disbelief began to smother their terror. The predator, the weapon of extinction, was showing submission. More than submission, it was showing trust. Rickard's breath caught. He had seen this creature slaughter battalions without hesitation. He had seen entire colonies vaporize to escape it. And now Elias stood before it with bare hands and calm eyes, his fingers brushing against thick armored scales, as though it were no more dangerous than a barnyard stray. But it wasn't the awe of the counselors that worried Rickard. It was the silence. That heavy, smothering silence that followed the impossible. Silence was the sound of someone recalculating, of entire plans shifting at the foundation. "Elias," Rickard said softly, the weight in his voice cutting through the hush, "you do realize what you've just done?" Elias didn't look up. His lips tilted into that slight, mischievous smile Rickard knew too well, the one that had gotten them both into more trouble than either man could count. "I think I made a friend," Elias replied, as though they were children picking up a stray cat. The predator's enormous jaw flexed, its tusk-like teeth brushing so close to Elias's arm that Rickard's hand hovered near his weapon. But Elias remained still, steady, a calmness radiating from him that made even the soldiers flanking the chamber lower their rifles. The predator shifted, its chest rumbling with a low vibration, not of hunger, not of rage, something different, something startlingly close to contentment. Then, with a motion so quick it stole every breath in the room, the predator lowered itself to one knee. The great beast bowed its head, a gesture the galaxy had never once seen. Not to generals, not to emperors, not to gods, but to Elias. The chamber erupted. Voices clashed in disbelief and outrage. Counselors demanded explanations, strategists muttered of manipulation, some screamed for Elias's immediate detention, and others for his coronation. The galaxy's most dangerous weapon had just chosen a human farmer's son from Earth as its master. Rickard moved quickly, his instinct as a soldier taking command of chaos. He placed himself between Elias and the mob of alien dignitaries, one hand hovering near his rifle, his other outstretched to signal calm. Yet his eyes never left Elias. Because beneath the pride and astonishment, Rickard saw the danger too. This wasn't salvation. This was provocation. "You've just shifted the balance of the galaxy," Rickard murmured when the clamor briefly dulled. "Do you understand what that means?" Elias looked at him finally, and for the first time, his expression wasn't playful. It was steady, unflinching. "It means they're going to come for me. And for it." He nodded toward the predator, which remained kneeling, patient as though awaiting Elias's command. And Rickard knew he was right. Already the counselor's eyes gleamed with greed and fear, the two fuels of war. To them, Elias wasn't a man, he was a weapon carrier, perhaps the most dangerous weapon carrier in existence. They would either try to control him or destroy him. That night, Rickard and Elias were confined under protective custody. The council claimed it was for their safety, but Rickard had lived long enough to know the difference between protection and imprisonment. Their quarters were sealed, guarded by multiple alien species, all of them shifting nervously as though the predator might come at any moment. "Do you think it will?" Elias asked, lying back on the cot, his hands behind his head, his posture maddeningly relaxed. "Will what?" Rickard asked. "Come for me. Break in here like a shadow and tear through them just to sit at my side." Rickard paced, restless, his soldier's instincts warning of 1,000 possible betrayals. "It doesn't need walls to stop it, Elias. But what worries me more is who's already plotting outside those walls. They won't let you walk away with it." Elias chuckled, soft but unnervingly certain. "It didn't kneel to them. It knelt to me. That's something they can't change." But Rickard wasn't comforted. He had seen governments twist the impossible into tools. He had seen how fear turned to desperation and desperation turned to blood. And in the cold silence of that alien cell, he realized that what had happened in the chamber was less a victory and more the spark of a war none of them were prepared for. The next day confirmed his fear. The council gathered again, but this time not to marvel. This time to scheme. They demanded Elias prove his control over the predator by commanding it. They wanted demonstrations, combat trials, executions of captured enemies, obedience in the face of threat. And through it all, Elias refused. "I'm not going to treat it like a weapon," Elias said, his voice echoing across the chamber. "It isn't a tool for your wars. It chose me, not you. That's all there is to it." The refusal was a spark to dry tinder. The counselors turned against one another instantly, some enraged by Elias's defiance, others calculating how to use his moral stance to their advantage. Plans were whispered, betrayals brewed. Rickard watched it unfold with the sickening certainty of a veteran who had seen too many wars begin the same way, with pride, with fear, with ambition. Later, when Elias returned to their quarters, Rickard confronted him. "You're making enemies faster than you're making allies. They'll kill you before they let you walk out of here." Elias's answer was simple. "Then I'll need the predator." And as if summoned by the words, the beast appeared that very night, slipping through defenses no one thought penetrable, its massive form looming in the shadows like a living omen. Guards scrambled, weapons drawn, yet the predator did not attack. It walked past them as though they were ghosts, moving with singular purpose until it reached Elias's side. And then, just as in the chamber, it knelt. The message was undeniable. The predator had chosen. But choice, Rickard knew, came with a price. A price the galaxy was already preparing to exact. And as the council's whispers turned into orders and orders turned into mobilizations, Rickard realized the two of them, one soldier, one farmer, bound by a beast no one could control, were about to stand at the center of a storm that could consume entire civilizations. The question was no longer if the galaxy would come for them. The question was how long they could survive once it did. And in the silence that followed, broken only by the steady, unnatural rumble of the predator's breath beside Elias, Rickard felt the answer pressing against his bones. Not long. Not long at all. The hall was alive with a silence so heavy it vibrated like a struck bell. Dozens of delegates from across the spiral arms leaned forward in their seats, their eyes fixed on the projection at the center of the chamber. The image was simple, grainy, pulled from the battered helmet cam of a Zandari soldier, but it was enough to make the air feel suffocating. The predator was there, half its body looming in shadow, luminous eyes burning with alien cunning. But what drew every being's breath short wasn't its sharp claws or its blood-stained maw. It was what came after. The creature had turned, muscles taut with murder, and then froze when a human voice, calm, steady, cut across the comm feed. "Easy, big guy," Daniel said, his voice resonant and completely unafraid. His hand reached up, slow but deliberate, and scratched beneath the Predator's jawline. The camera caught it, the galaxy's terror, the slayer of empires, leaning into that human touch like a spoiled beast. Its glowing eyes dimmed, the lethal tension bleeding away, and it rumbled out something like a contented purr. The chamber erupted into disbelief. Some shouted. Some hissed. Others recoiled as if they'd just seen heresy incarnate. The Predator, trained against endless armies, softened by a single man's hand. The council chair slammed his gavel to restore order, his face pale beneath the ceremonial tattoos. "Explain," he demanded. Daniel stood in the center ring beside the image, his posture tall and unbending despite the multitude of alien gazes pressing down on him. Elias remained close, silent but vigilant, his sharp eyes flicking from delegate to delegate as if he expected one of them to leap across the divide. "It's not complicated," Daniel said finally, his voice carrying with a confidence that rang like steel. "For centuries, you've all tried to conquer the Predator with armies, weapons, traps. You saw it only as an enemy. But you never stopped to wonder if it was something else. Something that could be understood. Something that could be trusted." "Trusted?" An Aurelian spat, its silver scales rippling with outrage. "That thing is extinction incarnate." Daniel's lips twitched into something between defiance and amusement. "Extinction incarnate doesn't rest its head in my lap and snore." The chamber's uproar rose again, but beneath the noise, Elias leaned slightly toward his friend and whispered, "You've just thrown a black hole into their order." Daniel's expression hardened, though his eyes glimmered. "Good. Maybe they needed it." But the uproar masked a deeper current. Not everyone shouted in fear. Some whispered with fascination, their voices laced with longing. Civilizations had spent millennia fighting, hiding, dying. To think that the terror could be calmed, even befriended, it cracked open a door no one had dared touch. The council chair gestured sharply. "Bring forth the testimony." One by one, soldiers, survivors, and scouts were called. Each relayed what they had seen, how the Predator, once unleashed, had torn through trained formations like parchment in fire. But when the humans arrived, when Daniel stepped forward, it stopped. It changed. It obeyed. Elias finally spoke when the council turned on him, demanding clarity. His voice was low, precise, edged like a blade honed too long. "You call it the end of all things. We call it what it is, a creature. One that responds to strength, yes, but also to honesty. To familiarity. It doesn't bow to your machines because machines offer no soul." But when Daniel reached for it, he wasn't trying to dominate. He was treating it like something alive. Something that mattered. He let his words hang, then finished with quiet intensity. "That is what you never gave it." The silence after was different this time, less of disbelief, more of an unearthed possibility no one had considered. The chair's gavel fell again. "Enough. This council will deliberate." But deliberation was a formality and everyone knew it. The truth had already seeped into the chamber like a toxin. It could not be erased. Later, outside the chamber, Daniel leaned against a pillar, the adrenaline finally giving way to exhaustion. Elias stood beside him, arms crossed, jaw tight. "You realize," Elias said, his tone dry, "that you've just painted a target on both of us. Half of them think you're a savior. The other half think you're playing with fire that will consume everything." Daniel exhaled, rubbing his temple. "Wouldn't be the first time." Then more seriously he added, "I didn't plan this, Elias. I just looked at it and saw something no one else would. I can't explain it." "You don't have to," Elias replied. "You just have to survive long enough to prove you're right." A low rumble interrupted them. Both men turned sharply as the Predator itself emerged from the shadows of the chamber's great entrance. Guards stiffened, weapons raised, but the creature ignored them all. Its gaze fixed only on Daniel. The hall froze as the beast padded forward, its claws clicking softly against the polished stone. For a breathless moment, every being present expected blood. Instead, the Predator lowered itself, resting its massive head against Daniel's chest like a beast greeting its master. Gasps echoed, followed by stunned silence. Daniel's hand rose almost automatically, brushing over the creature's brow. "Told you," he murmured, not to the council, not even to Elias, but to the universe itself. The Predator rumbled deep in its chest, a sound not of fury but of contentment. And in that single moment the galaxy shifted. Not with an explosion, not with a war, but with the simple act of a human scratching the chin of what all others called a nightmare. The council could not unsee it. The armies could not undo it. The legend of the Predator had been rewritten, and it was humanity that had held the pen. Elias watched the room, his soldier's mind already calculating the repercussions. There would be fear. There would be envy. There would be blood. But for now, for this heartbeat in time, there was also something no one in the galaxy had ever imagined: hope. He allowed himself the smallest of smiles. "Well, Daniel," he muttered, "you've just given the deadliest creature in the universe a human guardian. Let's see if the galaxy is ready for that." The chamber doors closed, sealing the council session behind them. Whispers spread like wildfire across the stars. Entire fleets would turn. Empires would quake. And somewhere deep in the infinite night, countless predators stirred, sensing change. But the fiercest of them all lay quietly against the chest of a man from Earth, soothed by nothing more than the warmth of human hands. The galaxy had trained armies to fight a nightmare. Humanity had shown it the touch of trust. And nothing would ever be the same again.